Imagine a world on the brink, a single gunshot in a distant city, and suddenly, the entire globe is engulfed in flames. This wasn't just any war. It was the Great War, the war that was supposed to end all wars. From 1914 to 1918, World War I redrew the map of the world, toppled empires, and left a scar on humanity so deep, we can still feel its tremors today. Over 30 nations, more than 16 million lives lost, there was a conflict that changed everything. But how did it happen? How did a complex web of alliances, ambitions, and a fierce sense of national pride lead to such unprecedented devastation? Let's unravel the story of the war that shaped the 20th century. By the early 1900s, Europe was a powder keg. On one side you had the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. On the other, the Triple Entente, France, Russia, and Great Britain. These weren't just friendly agreements. They were tripwires. A conflict involving one could pull everyone in. At the same time, the great powers were locked in a frantic race for colonies and resources across Africa and Asia. Britain, with its vast empire, eyed Germany's growing industrial might and powerful navy with suspicion. This imperial rivalry cranked up the tension another notch. Then there was the arms race. Militaries were glorified, and every major nation was building massive armies and stockpiling devastating new weapons. Germany, for example, had the Schlieffen Plan, a lightning-fast strategy to knock out France before Russia could even get its boots on. But perhaps the most volatile ingredient was nationalism. In empires like Austria-Hungary, diverse ethnic groups dreamed of their own nations. Nowhere was this more explosive than in the Balkans, where Serbia's ambition to unite all Slavic peoples directly challenged Austrian rule. The stage was set for a catastrophe. The spark that lit the fuse came on June 28, 1914. In the city of Sarajevo, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was assassinated by a young Serbian nationalist named Gavrilo Princip. Austria-Hungary, backed by a powerful Germany, saw its chance. It issued an ultimatum to Serbia, with demands so harsh they were nearly impossible to accept. When Serbia refused to comply with every single point, Austria-Hungary declared war. What should have been a local dispute quickly spiraled out of control. Russia, seeing itself as the protector of Serbia, began to mobilize its massive army. In response, Germany declared war on Russia. Then, following its master plan, Germany declared war on France. When German troops marched through neutral Belgium to get to Paris, Great Britain had no choice but to enter the fray. The tripwires had been sprung. Within weeks, the great powers of Europe were locked in a death struggle. The initial belief that the war would be over by Christmas quickly evaporated. On the Western Front, a brutal stalemate emerged. From the North Sea to the Swiss border, both sides dug in, creating a vast, horrifying network of trenches. Life in these trenches was a nightmare of mud, disease, rats, and the constant, terrifying roar of artillery. Any attempt to charge over the top into the enemy's machine gun fire was near suicidal. The Battle of the Marne in 1914 halted the German advance on Paris, but it locked the front in place for nearly 4 long, bloody years. The Eastern Front was more fluid, but no less brutal. Russia's massive army, though poorly equipped and led, launched early attacks into Germany. But they were handed crushing defeats at the battles of Tannenberg and the Masurian Lakes, exposing the deep weaknesses of the Tsarist regime. The war was turning into a grinding, industrial-scale slaughter, unlike anything the world had ever seen. This war was also a laboratory for new, terrifying technologies of death. The machine gun made defense almost impenetrable. Poison gas, first unleashed by the Germans, brought a new level of horror, causing agonizing pain and suffering. Clouds of chlorine and mustard gas would drift across no man's land, burning lungs and blinding soldiers. Then came the tanks. First introduced by the British at the Battle of the Somme in 1916, these armored beasts were designed to cross trenches and break the stalemate. Early models were clumsy and unreliable, but they signaled a new era of mechanized warfare. Above the trenches, the sky became a new battlefield. Pilots in flimsy, wooden fabric airplanes, initially used for scouting, soon engaged in deadly aerial dogfights. Aces like Germany's Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron, became legendary figures in this new form of combat. Meanwhile, beneath the waves, German U-boats waged a ruthless campaign against Allied shipping. Their attacks aimed to starve Britain into submission. But in 1915, the sinking of the passenger liner Lusitania, which killed over 1,000 people, including 128 Americans, sparked international outrage and began to turn public opinion in the United States against Germany. Though its heart was in Europe, this was truly a world war. Japan joined the Allies, seizing German colonies in the Pacific. The Ottoman Empire sided with the Central Powers, opening new fronts in the deserts of the Middle East, where figures like Lawrence of Arabia would make their name. Soldiers from across the British and French empires from India, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Africa were sent to fight and die on battlefields thousands of miles from their homes. The year 1917 brought 2 game-changing events. First, the United States, which had remained neutral for 3 years, finally entered the war. Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare, and the discovery of the Zimmermann telegram, a secret proposal for Mexico to attack the U.S., were the final straws. The arrival of fresh, well-equipped American doughboys provided a massive boost to Allied morale and resources. The second major event was the collapse of Russia. Worn down by staggering losses, food shortages, and chaos at home, the country erupted in revolution. Tsar Nicholas II was forced to abdicate, and soon, Vladimir Lenin and the Bolsheviks seized power. They promptly signed a peace treaty with Germany and pulled Russia out of the war. For Germany, this was a golden opportunity. They could now move all their troops from the Eastern Front to the West for one final, decisive blow. By the spring of 1918, Germany threw everything it had into a massive final assault known as the Spring Offensive. At first, they made stunning gains, breaking through the Allied lines. It seemed like they might finally win the war, but the German army was exhausted and overstretched. The Allies, now reinforced by a flood of American troops, held their ground, bent but did not break. Then, the tide turned for good. Starting in August 1918, the Allies launched a series of powerful counter-offensives known as the 100 Days Offensive. Using coordinated attacks with infantry, artillery, tanks, and aircraft, they began to systematically push the Germans back. The Central Powers started to crumble. Bulgaria surrendered in September, followed by the Ottoman Empire in October. The Austro-Hungarian Empire simply disintegrated as its various ethnic groups declared independence. In Germany, the home front was collapsing, people were starving, the economy was in ruins, and sailors and soldiers began to mutiny. Facing total defeat, the German High Command knew the war was lost. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918, an armistice was signed in a railway carriage in France. The guns finally fell silent. The world celebrated, but the peace was fragile. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1918, officially ended the war but placed the entire blame on Germany, forcing it to pay crippling reparations and give up territory. Many felt the terms were too harsh, creating a deep sense of resentment in Germany that would have devastating consequences years later. The war's aftermath reshaped the world. For great empires, the German, Austro-Hungarian, Russian, and Ottoman were gone. New countries like Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia appeared on the map. The League of Nations was created with the noble goal of preventing future wars, but it was ultimately too weak to succeed. For millions who survived, the world was never the same. An entire generation, the lost generation, was scarred by the physical and psychological trauma of the trenches. World War I was a monumental turning point in human history. It introduced the horrors of modern, industrial warfare and set the stage for even greater conflicts to come. It was a brutal lesson in how nationalism, alliances, and ambition can lead humanity down a path of self-destruction. And though it was called the war to end all wars, its legacy serves as a permanent, chilling reminder of how quickly the world can be brought to the brink. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this history fascinating, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. See you in the next video.